liberty, and justice for all.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Kaminsky.
Here.
Layton.
Here.
Andres.
Here.
Rose here. Walsh.
Here.
Garland and Lutz absent.
All right. And we're going to move forward to the election of officers. We've missed this earlier in the year. I believe we were supposed to do it in January, but we're going to do it today.
Are we going to do it today? We're down 2 board members.
They should have been here.
Does that automatically assign them to roles, or?
That's when we can nominate them.
Well, I think we should probably continue with the elections, and then, if we feel like we need to appoint somebody, I know Sarah Lutz said she'd be interested as long as it wasn't the actual chair position. So we could nominate her for something, I'm sure, and she'd forgive us.
Excuse me. Gosh.
But does anybody have any nominations?
Which one are you doing first?
We're going to start off with the election of the chair. So I would need a motion and support to nominate somebody as the chair.
Does anyone have a desire to be chair?
I mean, I can continue doing it if nobody is feeling it. I don't want to take anybody else's opportunity out there. But, if you guys want me to continue, I'm happy to do so.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. I make a motion to elect Welsh as chair.
I second.
All right, motion by LaRose, second by Layton. Does this have to be a roll call, or can we do all in favors?
Roll call.
That's a really good question. I think
last time we did a-
I don't think it has to be a roll call. It can be all in favor. It's not a resolution and ordinances are what I always do.
Okay,
Or spending money.
No, that's not
we'll do a group vote and, see what happens.
that's a commonly held thought though, Susan. You hear that a lot, but it's not actually.
Okay. So motion by LaRose, second by Layton. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Election of vice chair. Would anybody like to make a nomination?
Does anyone have a desire to continue?
I'll continue if no one else.
I'll give up treasurer to be vice chair.
I'll make a motion to nominate Commissioner Andres as the vice chair.
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Election of secretary. Does anybody want to make a nomination?
I could continue, but if somebody else really wants it, that's fine, we can have their chair. I mean, I
Make a motion to nominate Susan LaRose as secretary.
I'll second that. So, motion by Layton, second by LaRose. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Moving forward, election of treasurer.
In name only.
You do a great job. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, wait till about 7.5 minutes from now when I call up the,
I trust you. So I'll make the motion for Commissioner Layton to continue as treasurer. Hopefully, she's not upset at me.
Second that.
All right, motion by Walsh, second by Andres. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I'm not coming next January.
Motion passes.
I'm going to be sick that day.
Now that we have the election of officers out of the way, we can move forward to the approval of the agenda. If the agenda looks all right with everybody, I'll take a motion in support.
Mr. Chairman, we can remove business 1A underneath business for Parks Commission, which is item K. 1A, which is resolution 2022-01 for the rec passport. I've gotten word that we are not going to go for that one and instead just the trust fund.
Okay. So do we need to renumber the following motion after that? To make that the 2022-01 rather than 02?
Well, if you'd like to take it off the agenda, just someone can make a motion and send it second, and if that's okay with everybody, we can just unanimously approve it to remove it from the agenda since we're not going to go for it.
Okay. I'll move to approve the agenda with the removal of business before the Parks Commission, item 1A.
Support.
All right, so I have motion by Walsh, second by LaRose. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Any discussion on that?
For removing item 1A? Did you want to have any discussion regarding it, or, I mean, he just commented that, we weren't going to go for it, so there wasn't wasn't necessary to move forward with it, so. All right, we'll move on down to item F, review for conflict of interests. Does anybody have some conflicts of interest?
No.
All right. Moving forward, public comment. Anybody want to give public comment? All right, seeing nobody, we'll move to approval of the minutes. January 18th, 2022, regular meeting. And item H2, there isn't an approval needed because that was canceled. So once everybody has, go ahead.
I guess I just keep going back to number 2 on the minutes from the January meeting. With the question, or the sentence that says, Myers reviewed that planned projects for Grace McDonald Park, the community garden, and Arbutus Lake, number 5, have either been completed or been initiated. And I know Layton and myself had a quick discussion when that conversation was coming up at that meeting, that we both felt that the community garden needed to be re-looked at again for those, what we have in our current plan. So I don't know if it's the board's pleasure just to put an asterisk next to that, and then down below, that in parentheses, community garden, it was stated that it needs to be re-reviewed on our planning. I don't know if it needs to be in here or not, I'm just putting that out there. Other than that, I think the minutes were perfect. I mean, I don't have any other additions.
Is there a specific item that can be amended that we can propose to change? Because I want to just make sure we document what what we actually had our conversation about moving forward.
Yeah, our conversation, I believe, was about, it was in our current plan of a fee of, or idea planning of 32,000. And I think that both myself and Leighton had that good discussion there that night, that that really needs to be looked at, that that is really not quite realistic. So to me, in that sentence, you're saying it's either been completed or it's been initiated. So maybe under that word initiated, sort of makes it sound, in my eyes anyways, that, you know, that amount, that plan is been initiated as it stands. And that's where I think that needs to go back in that process.
Well, it is in the last sentence. The commission deliberated on projects to explore pursuing the funds, which included the community garden. So
Okay.
we're saying both things in one sentence, in one paragraph. We're saying it's been initiated, but we want to pursue it for the community garden, which is true.
So if you're comfortable, then I make a motion to approve the minutes as they are presented for January.
I'll second that. Motion by LaRose, second by Walsh. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving down to reports. Treasurer report, did you want to comment on that there?
Sure.
Commissioner Treasurer Layton?
There are some notes on page 2 of 1 for the budget. Page 10 in your packet, which you may or may not have read. There is an error. So, line item 801-100, legal expense fees and attorney should only be $32. The $66,942 that you see there should be an item down for attorney and engineer grant fees, but that's been caught and they are going to fix it. Now, I do have a question, Beth. The appraisal, but we haven't sent any money out. That's just line item 802.0409, expense of the 5,500 is the appraised expense for the approved grant for the Holiday Woodlands Natural Area. We're just showing, because we earmarked money for it.
Those appraisals, 5,500, completed both appraisals, and they've both been completed.
Completed. The appraisals have been completed. Oh, was that the price for the appraisal?
Yes, so through the
Okay.
DNR acquisition, in the process, you have to, after you do your due diligence, then you have the appraisals completed. And so those were done. They can't be done through the Conservancy. Those have to be done through the township. I believe, not positive, those funds are part of what we can put back in towards the overall funding of that.
But we did specifically earmark money 2 years ago for this project. So it's been there, and I'm sure we were glad to spend it.
For the,
Holiday Woodland?
I don't know, did we?
We did.
Oh, okay.
We did.
Okay.
I remember that. We're like, let's just put some aside now in our budget because we're
I think you're right, and
supporting this project.
I think we
Wasn't
didn't
like
spend
10
it.
or something?
What?
I think we didn't spend it, and it rolled over, and I think that 10 was in for this year, 2022 budget, 10,000. In there, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So-
how does that work, that 5,500? Who did the appraisal? The township did the appraisal?
Well, the Conservancy arranged for the appraisal. They have to use a certified or DNR, Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund approved appraisal list, and they have several that they have on there, and so this is the one that they used. One of the things is, you guys know that this is a 2019 DNR Trust Fund grant, and it's 2022. But everything in that year, in 2020, after it was awarded, it took 9 months to even get to the governor's desk. And it's usually much, much quicker than that. Then we took significant time making sure the due diligence and the environmental studies were done. And then when we were looking at doing the appraisals, which then started late last fall, we had to get on somebody's list because the appraisals are backed up.
Right.
So it's been one thing after another, adding just a little amount of time on it. So that's where we're at. It should close this year, those properties. I mean, they'll close in 2022. So now it's just a matter of, unfortunately, the other thing that happened with COVID is property values have gone significantly up, and so the appraisals came in higher. One of those properties, the contract with the Conservancy was at a certain price, and so that doesn't affect it. The other one was not, and so we're taking a look at all of those numbers, and you just work with the Conservancy and work with the DNR Trust Fund, and we'll see where all of that falls out, probably here within the next 3 months. It should all be kind of looked at and wrapped up, and any decisions needed, brought to the appropriate boards.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the last note is we help, there's a specific section of the TART Trail that is in East Bay Township. We pay for that plowing, and we budgeted 5,000, but it looked like the bill was only 4,000. So thank you, Mother Nature, for less snow.
So we didn't really pay for that ahead of time, right? We just put that in the budget and we waited for the bill to come.
The plow?
Yeah,
The plow,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
TART actually contracts with the vendor,
Yep, okay,
and then they parse that out between the different municipalities.
yeah, okay.
And we budget that every year. Other than that, I don't think other than just regular payroll expenses, I don't think we had any more changes.
Okay. Does anybody got any feedback, comments, or want to discuss the treasurer report any further? All right, we'll move forward to the subcommittees. Community garden.
It should be, we had a good meeting. Elise came back with the educational piece of the survey, which is, or you can get a copy of it. I think we have some out on the table too. Some interesting results, and we're sort of like on the same plane level there. Going forward, we reviewed to use SurveyMonkey for the public survey. We picked the dates of after spring break from April 4th through the 22nd. And then at our next meeting on the 18th of April, we can sort of go in there and look and review what kind of responses. Do we need something to do this last boost for the last few days or not? So we'll review that at that time. And then the next meeting, we are hopefully going to be able to just sort of walk the area out there and review. Plus, hopefully I'll have one more estimate coming back on doing some testing for the soil there also. So it'll be fun the next couple months to get the survey back from the public. There were some really good questions, and we reviewed those today, but in the community garden packet, you'll see the educational component of that survey that went out and the choices that came back. So I believe we're right on target to what our vision was so far with the educational part of it. So it was a good meeting.
Sorry, I missed it.
I missed you. Any questions?
I thought I did, I just can't remember. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't remember.
I know Beth and us, we discussed the timeline of how this is all going to fold in, because in the educational part of it, one of the questions that came back was, how are the schools going to get to this area? What's that whole element of it? And so it was asked, and the response back was, I think, the trails, schools and trails should be getting completed 23 and 24. So that might just all tie into when the community garden would be coming around also. So that should work out pretty good.
Are you referring to the safe routes?
Thank you. I was lacking words for that.
Yeah, I was just thinking how that was going to work, but then, yeah, that would make sense. It all comes together. All right. Well, cool. Thank you. We'll move down. Did you want to say something, or were you just prepared?
She's next.
We'll skip number 3 and go to 4. No, go ahead. Number 3, supervisor report.
I was a little slow on the uptake. I thought I was number 4 for a second. Wait a second. So first of all, let me cover a couple different things, and I'm kind of going to do a little scatter shot here. So if you have any questions, just let me know. One, I heard that you guys had a really nice sledding event, and I know you guys are going over that later, but I wanted to be able to say that I think that was fantastic. It was really low cost, low tech, low everything, but a lot of public engagement with, I heard, like 75 people, so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great job. Also wanted to let you know with Arbutus, we were supposed to be out at bid January, February-ish rough time frame. We're not yet ready to go to bid. We have to submit now to the DNR Trust Fund, just the plan so that then we can go to bid. But we did get our Eagle grant, so that was good. We're through that process. And let's see, we updated touch base on the Holiday Woodland project, which is the 2019 grant. And then good news from TART. I don't know if many of you have been able to see it, but they have a $900,000 federal funding for the 3-mile trail coming south.
Wow.
Just to put this in perspective, it's probably about a $14 million project, and that's really expensive. But if you look at the terrain that they're going over, a majority of it will be boardwalk. And that really increases the engineering and the construction of it, and obviously the materials for the construction of it. So about 900,000 is looking at the pre-construction engineering, which as you go through these projects, you learn that pre-construction engineering is something you got to figure out where those are funding from. There's oftentimes a grant will provide for construction funds, but not the pre-construction engineering, which actually is kind of a good segue into Safe Routes to School. That's $1 million, and the project is coming in estimates at 1.1. And I say estimate like this because projects are going, it's crazy out there right now. It's like the wild, wild west of project costs. So we are in the process of going through that Safe Routes to School, meeting with the road commission, the engineer that did our application, and kind of seeing where we're at there and pacing that out. So, but it's all good news. I mean, it's all good news. Things will be coming together over the next several years for that multimodal access coming down from South Airport and then in and around the schools, which, again, you guys know this, it's 4 schools, it's mind-boggling to me that it is 3 different school districts, public, private, and charter, and then well over, I think it's 2,000 children a day in school right in this vicinity, in this corner, so.
Many?
2,000.
Over 2,000.
4 districts?
3 districts, 4 schools.
TCAPS, right?
TCAPS?
Christian.
Catholic, yeah.
Catholic.
Uh-huh.
And then.
Which is Christian, of course, but
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I
yeah, I
mean
know.
is as opposed to Chisi Christian and St. Francis, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And then charter.
Correct,
Okay,
the academy.
ISD is inside of TCAPS, so that's 4. There's ISD
Oh,
students
Okay,
inside of TCAPS, so you could say 4 districts.
okay. I don't think that, I
That
know
doesn't count?
that. Well, I believe if I recall correctly, Grand Traverse Academy counts for 2 schools because of the age span, the K through 8. They're like a K through 8, and then they're a high school. So, but that one is one that I'm not sure that we've considered, so interesting. I'm sure we'll
Northwest
be
Education
bringing that up,
Services.
yeah, with our grant coordinator.
Yeah, I think they would be considered separate. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's no like shared administrative services amongst the two.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, very interesting.
Is Traverse High part of TCAPS?
So it wasn't part of this, it is part of TCAPS. It was not part of the Safe Routes to School because that is very simply going from point A to point B, home to school. And we put these 4 schools together. So, yep. Let's see, a couple other things. I feel very fortunate that East Bay Township has always supported strongly professional education and networking, and so was able to go to 2 conferences recently. One was Government Finance Officers Association, and it's full of really exciting things like GASB and all that kind of thing. So I will not make you snooze from that one. But MParks was held here in Traverse City. I have never gone to MParks just because, I tend to go more to the finance one or the Townships Association, that sort of thing. But since it was here in Traverse City, I did go to it. I found it to be a really well-run conference, and just wanted to share with you some of the specific things that I went to there. I think you guys would find those topics interesting. And I'll send you a link of the all of the workshops, because they are putting the information online, so I can download that and give that to you if you have any specific one that you're interested in. But I went to a trail wayfinding, and this was down out of Ingham County. And what happened in Ingham County, they approved a countywide millage, and one of the things that they were doing with their countywide millage, and I'm not here proposing a countywide millage, I just think what they did with it is interesting. They did wayfinding, trail wayfinding across the entire county, but of course, most of these are municipal parks, and they of course have their own identity. So they came up with a very unified look and approach to the wayfinding that also allowed at the top of the signs and one other portion to allow the local municipality to put their logo, emblem, color, whatever designated their park. So they could have their brand identification, plus people who use the system all across the county, doesn't matter what side of the county you're on, you're familiar with their trail markers, you're familiar with their trail entrance signs, all of those things, down to they worked with their 911 dispatch and had every sign location numbered differently. So if you call for emergency services, they know exactly where you are. So it was really very interesting. They actually, because it was through a millage, they were able to provide that to every municipality within their county for free. They had about 7 of the municipalities decide to do it, and the rest are coming along now that they've seen it done. But I thought of the trail wayfinding just because we do have some trails that could be marked, really well. And so it was interesting, and have some good resources and contacts from there. The Spicer Group was the consultant that kind of did a lot of that. The RFPs available, that sort of thing that they went through. Innovation to Invitation, which talked about inclusive play, and a lady with disability she works for a playground company, and she gave talks on inclusive play, inclusive design, and it was really wonderful and fascinating, all the way from, physical, how you approach play equipment physically based on your abilities, and also some, when I say newer diagnoses that don't have to do with necessarily physical, but how you process things. So autism, Asperger's, ADHD, all of those things, and how that affects your play in playgrounds. And I thought that was really interesting, and one of the things I talked to a lot of vendors about there is how in an existing playground, because they of course show a lot of playgrounds that are like brand new, beautiful, brand new playgrounds that are all inclusive. And it's like, great, but in practicality, you maybe have a playground system that hasn't been developed with that level of inclusivity. First of all, it wasn't a thing, right, 10, 20 years ago maybe, that it is now and should be. And so one of the things the vendors, I spoke with them about, is how do you add a piece here and a piece there? And so maybe over time you build up that level of inclusive play. So I thought that that was very interesting. And I have for you guys, I didn't bring it as a visual, but I have a tote bag literally filled with catalogs this big and some really interesting per-piece things for inclusive play, other things that you guys have been talking about. So I'll have those here available in the office anytime if you want to grab a cup of coffee and look through. I know everybody can go online, but sometimes, I don't know, it's kind of nice to be old school and have the book in your hands and look through and kind of let your thoughts imagine. Went through a class on wireless cell towers, which some parks are putting in for the revenue stream. I went to that selfishly for the township and the Water Enterprise Fund because we have cell towers there. But obviously that's very interesting because some parks commissions are using that in their parks to provide for revenue sources, yeah.
Not going to talk about it.
Yeah, the county has one of those. Did go
Had.
to one on pickleball. Unfortunately, believe it or not, I got to share with you guys this. A snowy day, my car was in the shop, so my husband dropped me off to the conference, and he said, take your winter coat. I said, I'm not taking my winter coat because I'm going to be in this conference all day long, and I'm not going to charge it all the way around. And he's like, you never know, they might have a fire drill, or, something could happen where you have to go, you leave, or you go do something. I said, no, that never happens. I would have to just carry my coat. And went to go to a pickleball workshop, and if you would believe it or not, there was a fire drill. Or not a fire drill, but a fire call. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it.
Did you tell your husband?
It's supposed to be prepared.
I did something, probably, I did take a little bit of advantage of being a local official and texted and said, is this real? And I got back from our ambulance staff, we think it's a false thing. And I was like, so I headed towards the door, but I did not make it outside. I took such a long time getting there. Anyway, sustainable and resilient approach to park maintenance. That really it was less that I wanted to hear and more about a specific project, not that it was a bad project, but called no mow areas. And like downstate, they do this no mow area, but they do mow twice a year, but it's less intense, to let it grow natural. But then they come and they burn annually. And I think it just has less, it was interesting to know about, but I think they have some bigger spaces that I think that it's more, it's like if they had a Maple Bay type thing. So I think it's not so much for the smaller parcels that we have. Fast Actor contracts, I mentioned this at the community garden because West Bloomfield Parks, which has 8 or 9 just in their parks and programming personnel, which is huge. And they've really hashed out so many things from having food vendors at events to different programming and the contracts, having artists or yoga or whatever in the parks have hashed through a lot of things. So they gave us a link to all of their contracts. So that was really a nice resource. Social media marketing, that was very interesting. I had to stop myself from going up and asking the girl if she just wanted to come and live in Traverse City and work for East Bay Township. She was really very talented. It was a good it was a good seminar. And then, last but not least, I went to 2 natural resource trust fund talks. One about current grants, and our grant coordinator was one of the ones who was presenting, so I really wanted to hear what she had to say. Our grant coordinator for this area is absolutely fantastic, really nice lady. And then they had a roundtable with the DNR Trust Fund. I'm sorry, yeah, the trust fund, 2 of the board members. And one of the things I thought was interesting about that one is they were talking about the ARPA funds that are coming down through the feds to the state that are outside of the funds that, say, municipalities are getting, but that are being blocked and then given to, like, say, Eagle, DNR, so forth. They're going through the process, just like everybody. Okay, now if we get X number of dollars, how are we going to parse that out? DNR is very lucky. They're very well versed in doing grants, and so they're probably looking at, building on some of the grant applications or methods that they have now. But it was a nice opportunity to get to tell them from a local municipality that we don't have a lot of, projects that are on the shelf. We don't have the kind of resources where we can just go to our engineer and say, yeah, spend $10 or $20 to $50,000, whatever, however extensive the project is, on the pre-construction engineering, and let's have that so that we can just pull it off the shelf when there's funding. Was able to tell them that doesn't exist, and there were several in there that were nodding their heads, and so it was more like, tell us instead, where you want to gear that money, and then give us the time lapse or the ability to get that engineered, and then we can come in with the project. So it'll be interesting to see how they end up using not only them but others with the ARPA funds. Let's see. The grant application. So I'm very sorry that the meeting was canceled last month. I appreciate your understanding with the ice. It was unfortunate, but I am glad that everybody was safe. And the difficulty and the busyness in trying to get this rescheduled, I appreciate your understanding. We obviously, if you saw in the news, we were busy recently with some blight and handling those issues, so it was just a crazy, crazy couple weeks. So I appreciate your understanding. The DNR grant application for the warming hut, the board did approve the application for that. You guys have seen the design and approved the design. However, I will tell you, not however, but I will tell you that we got the estimate from the architect in shortly before our board meeting, like the week before. And the numbers, as I mentioned, projects are crazy right now between materials and vendors that are busy. And it was the architect bidding this, so I'm not really sure what kind of unit costs he was putting to this, but it came out of very, very expensive. I came with $470,000. Now, this did include the site work and, sidewalks and all of those things. And I think every single person on the township board had a concern that how would this building that's a rectangle, that doesn't have a bathroom in it, doesn't have a kitchen in it, the only really utilities that it has are outlets for purposes of people, heating water or having a crock pot there, making hot chocolate, that kind of thing, and natural gas heat, which we already have a natural gas line all the way over to the bathroom. So we're a little perplexed on the pricing of that. I know the engineering fees that were in there were more than we're even putting into Arbutus. And Arbutus has an Eagle grant, a bathroom, a septic system that is being directional drilled under the road. So a much more complicated project with $25,000 or $20,000 less in engineering fees made no sense to me. I really felt like what I had seen had kind of a contingency built on top of a contingency, plus numbers that, nobody, with this point, with bids coming in very high, nobody wants to get caught with, I'm going to let you know that it's, 300,000 and it comes in at 400. So, we're anticipating that that was just a really high estimate, but we will be looking at that over the next 9 to 10 months and looking at whether we end up pulling that grant or the grant application, because right now, the deadline is that we can't do anything about is April 1st for submitting. That's the DNR trust fund, drop dead, April 1st, that's when your application has to be in. We can amend things, we can change things, add additional information, all of those things after that. So we are going to try to refine those numbers with our engineer and the plans, and then see where we're at. And if we decide to pull an application, which we would do with everyone's knowledge, the board and the Parks Commission, we would do that. There is no harm, no foul. It's not like if you say, particularly before their award, and even I have heard from them even after the award, they want to see successful projects. Where you get into a bind is when you get awarded, you're doing the project, and then for some reason, you just drop off the face of the earth, you don't finish the project, it doesn't happen, those types of things. And believe it or not, that happens. The one workshop I went to, I was joking with the grant coordinator. I said, I had to come to this one about finishing grant processes because my grants were awarded in 2019 and 2020. I said, I better be here, And she's like, no. She said, you're good. She said, you have your reports, we're in constant communication. She said, where we get worried is when people get the grant award and they're just, not working towards it, not. So we'll continue to reevaluate because that's a very high price.
Sorry, could you repeat what you said the price was?
Sure, it was $470, and the 50% then from the township was 236 or 230.
Because we had it at 32,000.
Yeah, well, so
And
number
it
one.
came in at,
So there's a couple things with that, Corey. I think years ago when that was put in the rec plan, that was not even a reasonable number then.
okay.
Yeah.
And I remember when that was in the rec plan early on, I was like, there's no way that's going to be $30-some thousand. That's not going to happen. Going to this, I was anticipating, it's this $200,000 building. 100 from DNR, 100 from us. But again, I think it's a compilation of several things impacting it. So we will continue to work at that. But I do think it is worth putting in the application and continuing to try to work at that rather
On
than
April
just.
1st, so
Yeah.
Friday, a week from Friday?
The application will go in.
Okay.
So that 470,000 number, that's for start to completion?
That's the estimate from an architect.
So when you get that estimate, and then you get this guy on the phone, like, you could build me a beautiful house for $470,000. How are you, how does this equate to, what's the square footage of that warming hut?
Yeah.
200 by 200?
It's not rational, in my opinion. Again, I'm not out there getting bids and quotes. He's an architect and he's working with builders on a daily basis. I am not. I did not speak with him specifically. As I mentioned, this was shortly before our board meeting. I did speak with our engineer and I said, this just doesn't make any sense. I said, look, he's got your engineering fee, 20 grand more than what we're doing on the other park, with more intensive use of your time. And he's like, yeah, he said, I wouldn't lower it only because I think he's just trying to keep it high to make sure you don't come in, over that and you're short. So he said, I think he just wants a big buffer there. We can take a look at it. So that's the way I proceeded with the board, and that's the way we're moving.
So, like, is there like a specific number that we'd be more comfortable with, like 200,000 you said? Or?
You know, I don't know, the board didn't really speak so much with the level at which they would be comfortable. I think we all spoke to the level of 470,000. How is that possible with not, as I mentioned, some of the infrastructure that that building would contain? You know, I will say there are times, you know, things are way more expensive than what you think they are. I know when we, you know, even did the Grace McDonald parking lot, and it's like you change something and that adds up. But yeah, I don't know what that amount is. We didn't speak about that. We spoke about whether it was reasonable to think that that building would even be 470, and if it was, would we fund it? And I don't think you'll find a lot of support for funding that at 470. And I completely understand that. I'm there too. Although the one caveat that I would always say is, remember, this is a grant, and so our true cost is 50% of that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to, I mean, you're still not going to overpay for something.
So what are you saying you can do? Can you go back and sort of dissect that?
Yep.
Or get another? Can you go out for another?
So we won't go out for bids and anything like that. You really just need we will work with the engineer further on getting those prices. Yep.
Trying to remember what the max ask was for a DNR grant. Do you know
No,
that?
it's under that, and
Usually like 300, isn't it?
I think that yes, I do believe you're right. So a total of 600. One of the reasons that I asked for the latitude to go to October to decide what we're going to do is you don't even find out who your competition is until after your first initial funding, which is late summer, September maybe. It just depends a bit. So we want to make sure we have some good information before we make some of those decisions. But definitely didn't want to pass up the opportunity to put in for that grant funding. I know this year there were a lot of applications, and there were a lot funded last year. I remember sitting at the meeting, we didn't have an application in, I still watched, and I was shocked at the percentage that were funded. And one of the reasons that the passport grant is not being pursued, because you can put in for two of them and see how it progresses. But that was only funded, only 30% of the projects were funded through that. And we just didn't feel like it would be a very competitive grant there. And so as we do refine this, we're hoping to see, you know, where the cost comes in. Can we amend it so that it's a more competitive amount? Can we also, we'll look to see where scoring comes in, to see if any amenities need to be added. We did, of course, have the accessibility, which is what they're always looking for. So that's kind of what happened with that. We do have the grant resolution from the Township Board. That is what you need for the application. You guys have a grant resolution in front of you. I always think that that's nice to have, as well as, you know, letters of support. And but as far as going, we do have what we need to go in for the grant at this point. Let's see, last thing I wanted to mention to you is just what's going on with the township. One of the things that we passed is we're going out for a request for proposals to redo the employment manual. And in the end game, and why I'm mentioning this to you guys is, in the end, what we would like to see is an employment manual which deals with employees that are township employees here at this facility or in buildings and grounds, and then one that deals with the ambulance. Right now, they're bulked into the same manual, and the jobs are so fundamentally different that there are parts that don't apply correctly. So we want to separate those out. And then with that too, we're looking at getting a separate document for elected and appointed officials, so that you will get stuff that is solely related to your capacity as an appointed official.
Okay.
Well, and do you have any questions for me? Okay, well, thank you very much, and awesome job on doing the sledding hill. I'm gonna step out, not because I'm not interested, but I'm gonna get going, and do want to mention to you too, Jake and I have talked about this, but really when you start to look at that ARPA funding, I think it's probably best, in my opinion, is that you don't necessarily look at it just for ARPA funding, because you know the final rulings have changed for local units of government. I know you guys have heard that. So really, I think just take a broader step back and really just look at, doesn't matter where the funding comes from, what's your prioritization of projects? You guys have gotten a lot done off of the rec plan, and so that's a good thing. Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you. All right. So that brings us down to item J4, Parks Commission consultant.
Hello. You finally made it to me. I attached the report that I got first from February and then in March. And with that top story is kind of the story of how that ARPA funding, the rules started to change over time. So yeah, that final rule for ARPA funding came in February. And that has given us a lot more concrete guidance on what we can do with the ARPA funding. Some of these articles we can skip, like on page 11. If you're interested, you can read about some alternatives to salting the roads in the winter, which is a lot more kinder to the water systems and our vehicles. But one that was kind of interesting on the March report, which is on page 13, there's a MEDC, or it's the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, has announced the structure of its programs to disperse ARPA funding. So kind of what Beth was mentioning, the state has been, through their various departments and organizations, been given federal ARPA funding to the state, but with that money supposed to then funnel back down to the municipalities. This one's probably going to be more in the wheelhouse of a planning commission, but there's also room here for some private-public partnership with some of these sort of finance gap funds. Some of these figures are pretty big. They're $5 million per project for real estate rehabilitation and development. And I wanted the township to be aware of this because I think there could be things within East Bay Township that would fit some of these programs really well. But it goes on too. There's $1 million per project awards for public space improvements. And that's where I started to think about maybe how parks could be involved. If somehow there is public space involved. Usually with most of our public spaces are parks. So I'm wondering if there's maybe grants that we could go for that would go up to $1 million. There's grants of up to $20 million for local or regional partners. I'm assuming that might kind of get into the county level, but I guess it would depend on which organizations of government were working together on that. So I wanted to bring that one to your attention. Probably not a lot that we can do on it right now, but I know that the application window is open, and I was hoping at least Beth could be aware of it, but I'll send it her way if she hasn't had a chance to look at it. That kind of ends, I think, the highlights of the monthly reports. After it, on page 15 of your packet, I started attaching some correspondence, and I think in the future I'll just attach all of those together under one line item. This one actually comes from Beth, and it's the Grand Traverse County Board Member Basics Training. I believe she sent this to you earlier, so I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to go to this or not. I see some nods, okay.
I did attend it, yeah.
Yeah, I know, this passed, at least I think it was trying to get it to you before you got it in your packet. Well, you got it in your packet before the meeting, and I believe Beth sent it out.
She emailed it to us,
Yeah.
but it's a Thursday during normal business hours.
They usually put a link out or some way you can access it.
Oh, that's what I was gonna ask, if we could like watch it on YouTube or something, or.
I mean, I know they've done that in the past with these. They put it on a desk or make it available, or if you probably contacted Kit Tholen with the county, he could probably send you a copy.
Or maybe they have a recording of the session. I'm not sure,
I
but
don't think they do, because I emailed her. So, because I told her I work during the day, I can't do it during that.
They did
time.
record, or they did have a live recording, so I don't know if that's been recorded and kept.
sure.
I'll do some digging around. If I find a link, I'll send it to you at the distribute, but
Okay, just a few more correspondences in here too. On page 16, there's a memo from Beth about Killingsworth to be treated for autumn olive this season, that being an invasive species that really loves growing around these parts. There's also some correspondence on 17 about University of Michigan's, they call this the iLabs eCities research. And they do an analysis on some of the land use practices and economic practices in communities. And Traverse City, East Bay Charter Township, and Garfield Charter Township did really well on some of these. And there's a kind of a 5-star ranking. And I believe East Bay and Traverse City fell into the 4 stars, along with some other communities, which is on 19. We're right actually at the bottom of the leftmost column. And so these are some of our compatriots in the 4-star communities for kind of fostering economic and social development within our communities. 5 stars is even better, and I believe it was Garfield fell on here, which they did right underneath the city of Ferndale. So it's good to see some of our local municipalities in Grand Traverse County seeming to do really well in some of these fields. After that, on page 21, there is a letter from Trail Life Troop 2818, which are thanking you all for the sledding party at Grace McDonald Park. They wanted to say thank you, and
What
they.
is Trail Life Troop?
So I think it's a different type of scouting organization. So they are just a different organization. And they sent us some drawings.
These are, I know, I was looking at these. They're just,
They're very inspired.
yes. Number 34 is a,
Yeah, you got some air.
yeah. And you said it towards the tree there. It's very nice. You really captured Grace McDonald.
It's pretty accurate, little bump.
So that wraps up my report and the correspondence for today.
thank you, Jake.
So on that consulting report, where it says up to 1 million per project for public space improvements, are you seeing something there that could be maybe something for the parks, Jake, or?
Well, I definitely had some thoughts on it. It's
And what's the process that needs to be, is that, you know?
they have laid it out pretty well, and I actually was able to get some more information, and I realized I would have been nice if I had included it with the packet, but that link at the bottom of the article, there was sort of a walkthrough of the application on there that I was reviewing, as well as just some more information about the projects that we couldn't fit into these 2 paragraphs. I'm thinking about that Q&A period as well. It would have been nice to get a date for you, but I think we should be able to find that on their website. My thought with it, though, it has to do at looking at probably the public space in regards to what we could maybe have initiated here at the Parks Commission. But it might have to fall into the purview of how they want the grant program to go, which is kind of outlined in the second paragraph. It says, the competitive projects must clearly respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, but also represent good planning. Eligible applicants are individuals or entities working to rehabilitate vacant, underutilized, blighted, and historic structures and the development of permanent place-based infrastructure associated with traditional downtowns, social zones, outdoor dining, and place-based public spaces. Long-term and regional impacts, housing that is attainable to the local workforce, targeting areas of economic disadvantage, and projects in traditional commercial areas are competitive advantages in the program that reflect best planning practices. So with that prompt to me makes me think about the US 31 corridor and perhaps public infrastructure that we could create on that corridor that either doesn't currently exist or there's a barrier to it existing. So, maybe like a property ownership issue or just the cost of getting the property in a state where it could be like a public space. But that's what I was thinking about. I certainly, my eyebrow certainly raised when I was reading about this program because these are very similar amounts to what some of the largest trust fund grants go for, and it's not going to be a recurring thing as far as my knowledge. It's going to be a one-time thing.
And I mean, I'll shoot this out, I see, as part, maybe possibly the community garden type with the pavilions, the open space, the meeting area for public use. For that, the whole element of it, between the gardening and the, like I say, the pavilion area. Does that concept fit in with this grant or whatever you want to call it?
It could hit some of the target areas, but it might not hit all of them. And I think that because the way that they've been framing this and the MEDC's primary focus on business and economic development is that it makes me think they're looking for, in their own words, downtown social zones. So I think what the MEDC specifically is looking for is ways to help facilitate more economic growth in sort of kind of commercial areas that were probably having some impacts from COVID because of the way that business models changed. So therefore, I think their solution is we'll help fund local outdoor improvements. So
Like you could do, like, say, downtown area or along the corridor, more outside dining, that kind of thing, year-round outside dining. So, yeah, okay.
well, so for example, on the 31 corridor, it could be things that are like streetscape improvements that help not only improve the appearance of the corridor, but would make it so
Accessible?
it increases the accessibility, it makes people feel more safe. It could facilitate more sort of concentrated economic activity in that area with certain infrastructure
Yeah, I can
there
see
that
that.
currently doesn't exist. Or, I'm thinking about some of the lakefront properties that either we own or are in coordination with other local governments. I know that the county has some property, I believe, on, it might be the boat launch it is.
Yeah, I was just thinking
They're on
about
that road
by the
end.
Hotel.
And the state has a lot of property on the waterfront in our township as well.
Fortunately for us, they just changed their disposal policy, so all they got to do is, we can go, maybe what we can do is go up to them and ask that they give us the boat launch, and then we could probably request money on it too, so.
Well, that's right, since the county changed that disposal policy for, what was it, Twin Lakes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're doing that, might as well
I hadn't even considered
jump on
that.
board.
Yes, we'll take one. So just to clarify, is this the art and excuse me for sounding not well-informed. So is this over and above, like what was, these funds that you're talking about? For the 1 million, 5 million, 20 million, or does this have to come from the chunk that's set aside to East Bay Township? Is this separate from?
So yeah, it's a separate,
Okay.
it's almost like a separate account. So it's all, so it all originated with, you know, one source, but it's gotten funneled through different ways.
Okay.
So the funnel that we're going to talk about later is sort of more of a direct funnel. It came straight to the township. But this one is getting funneled through the state first. And now the state is trying to achieve its goals through its various departments. So
So if we applied for funds through this program, it does not affect the funds that are gonna go directly to East Bay Township that we have to split with the other, like with emergency services and, you know, whatever.
yeah, so it would be, if we went for it and got it, it'd be like just getting additional grant money.
Okay, that's what I wanted just to clarify.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure, we would kind of want to see if there's the buy-in at the township level. I'm not sure how quickly this needs to get going, but it is a new program, and I don't think it'll be back this time next year. So unless something that I can't predict happens, I think these fundings are going to be here for a limited time, and those who can capitalize on the public space improvements to help address the COVID pandemic might be able to walk away with some nice projects getting done. I also think, too, if you see local or regional partners, what if the state and the township did some sort of cooperation on a project on the state park beach? I know one of the big problems there is the highway, and I wonder if MDOT can even get involved, because so you have MDNR and MDOT right there. I know one of the big problems there is just facilitating people across that street.
Yeah, it's a very, very busy area.
And there's also, too, so that's interesting, there's that property right next to the state park that has been vacant for,
Oh, the one the tribe owns?
Yeah, it's
is that owned by
Yeah,
the
where
tribal now?
that hotel used to be, that's owned by the tribe, yeah.
Okay, so they've held on to that for a long, did they recently purchase it through their, like, economic corporation,
By
or?
the tribe for a long time.
Okay,
Because when that hotel was there, like, gosh, 20 years ago, that hotel was bought and run by the tribe for a while, and then they demolished it.
Right.
So, yeah,
Been
so
a
that's,
while.
so it's my understanding it's owned by the tribe.
Well, maybe,
We talking like across from Culver's?
Yeah,
Yeah, like right next to the state park.
it's across the creek there.
Yeah.
because, you know, it could be nice, too, if this is something that maybe Beth has some interest in, if staff at the township could either help out or help facilitate a grant of some sort, that we could coordinate between departments. I'm sure there's some planning goals that Claire has in the planning department that this could potentially meet. So I could talk with Beth and talk with Claire and see if this is something we're interested in. I know they got so many things going on right now, this might not be, they might not have the capacity to do it, but I know Carl's just finishing up a grant application, so.
So he'll have some free time on his hands? Well, awesome, thank you. All right, well, I suppose we can move down to K1, which would be the Grace McDonald sledding event, correct?
No, the resolutions. 1B.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Grace McDonald Park, letter B, resolution, Parks 2022-02, resolution of support for MDNR Trust Fund grant.
But it would be 01.
So we would,
02.
so if we adopt this resolution, we would have to amend the resolution to reflect 2022-01.
That would be a good idea.
Does anybody got any kind of input they want to share with this resolution, or are we prepared to entertain a motion and support? I mean, we could do a motion and support and, open it for discussion as well. Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah, I think maybe the best part for discussion is just to read the resolved section. I mean, the section above it where the few whereas is important too, but that's probably that's the meat of the resolution, and everything else is a little bit of the procedural things. So if, that's probably the language we want to review just to make sure we're comfortable with. I think the bulk of it is that towards the bottom, it's the Parks Commission supports a submission of a DNR trust fund grant and the conceptual plan for a warming hut building at the park, and recommends that the board considers approving similar resolutions to this effect, which the board has already done. And the Parks Commission, upon a successful grant application and award, recommends that the Board of Trustees make available through financial commitment 50% of the total project's costs. Yeah, and I think, I'm glad Beth brought up the info about the hut before, because we know now that that could be a fluctuating number. And I do trust that she'll work with Brian to get to an estimate that the board feels comfortable with, and perhaps is more reasonable, because that figure from the architect doesn't seem likely to, and I guess in their opinion, doesn't seem to be an accurate estimate for what we would actually want to get done. But I guess we'll have to see. Maybe it is, and that's just kind of what the cost of doing business is now. But
Okay. So if we were to adopt this resolution, we would be, and, it'd be kind of on the condition that we submit the grant application.
This is just
Consider-
giving us support. That's what it's doing.
So it'd be given support to submit the grant application.
and Carl would attach it with the grant application.
And the township board has already supported this too.
Okay. Well, I'll move to adopt resolution Parks 2022-01. Resolution of support for application to Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund 2022 grant program for Grace McDonald Park Warming Hut.
Second.
So we have a motion by Walsh, second by Layton, and I believe for resolutions, we do roll call vote.
Layton,
Yes.
Andres,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Kaczynski,
Yes.
LaRose, yes.
All right, motion, or the resolution is approved and is adopted.
Is approved.
All right. That will bring us down to item K2, Grace McDonald sledding event. I was there. It was a lot of fun.
So I guess the only thing.
We were all there. All of us were there.
Yeah.
Those that are here are there.
I guess the only thing I need is from anyone who did not submit to me their data to present to me now. And I will record it, or if you have it done on paper, just hand it, you can just give it to me and I'll digitize it.
Did you get mine?
So let me double check my emails. So I got Susan's, I got Sarah Lutz's, I got Zach's.
Probably need mine. I could give you,
I'm not sure if I got anyone else's.
I
Mine?
sent
You
it
get
to
mine?
you.
I got Stephanie's.
Okay, let's email it to you on Wednesday.
Yeah, I sent you mine a while ago. I will send it again.
Island. I'm wondering if maybe you have my old East Bay email?
Yeah.
Oh, let's have a look.
It's the BRIA one.
Yeah, using.
They should just delete that one. the East Bay one.
Sent
Maybe they're hopeful that you will.
to Jacob.
Come on board
Myers.
full-time
Yep,
here.
East Bay Township.
Okay, yeah, I have a different address now.
Can I forward this? Yes. Forward.
In that case, I think I only need Walsh's and Garland's. So I'll have to hound you two down after.
I have mine in my calendar. I could just give you the numbers if that's easier after the meeting, or I could give it to you now too.
Just take a picture of it.
Yeah, that would work too.
I don't think I'm able to, but,
Do a screenshot.
Did
Here,
it
you want
load
me to show
it?
you how
It
to do
better
that?
have loaded it.
well, because there's 3 different times in the calendar. Maybe if I did it. Yeah.
I'll help.
I'll figure it out after the meeting. I'll get you numbers.
Sounds good. Yeah, we don't need them right now, but I'll get it from you soon.
And it sounded like you were looking for additional photos too from the event.
Yeah, if anyone had any additional photos, please send them my way. I think we're just interested in maybe publishing them on the website or
Did you get
newsletter.
mine, or?
I did.
Were you able to open those?
Yes,
Okay.
I was. So I did get some from Susan. But I was wondering if anyone else had any other, because I have some and I got some from Susan, so.
I don't believe I took any.
Okay. More the merrier, really, so.
I was sweating.
All right.
Well, now I have my good sled.
Okay, and I'll get all that together and get it to Carl and before he gets his application out.
All right, wonderful. I know we talked a lot about this already. Is this, was,
So in the packet item, the excerpt from a Board of Trustees February 15th, 2022 meeting, which when I had assembled some of this before was going to be, was going to be right before we had our February meeting, so it was going to be really fresh. But there was one part of their minutes that I thought we wanted to go to. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess the minutes that I have included aren't what I remember them being, but I took my own notes on their meeting, and essentially what the board said at their February meeting, which is after we had our January meeting, we had the discussion. Let's see what the board's how they're feeling about things. So that was brought up at their meeting about ARPA, and where the board's opinion was that is they were interested in easy projects to approve, with some of that being influenced by trying to be faster than other municipalities and competing for contractors. So that was something they were influencing their opinion. And one of the quotes was quick-hitting, low-hanging fruit. But with the questioner that was risen from, could we maybe partially fund these from other grants? And with that, I'm not sure if we know that very well yet. I can get with Beth to see if other projects are, would work if it was just from grants, because I think sometimes with the matching, I think that with the definition of what counts as the match can be a little gray. But I think those are the 3 big points. Was they are, I think, maybe a little worried about waiting too long, losing out on the contractors, because even though I believe it's like a 24 and 2026 is the 2 big dates, the 2024 being committed, and then the 2026, the funds being expended. So I'm wondering if, I think maybe what they're thinking is, well, it's already the spring of '22 now. Are we going to be able to get someone to commit to do it in that time frame, from the time of start to finish? I think we'll probably do okay, but that was something that was on their mind. And I think maybe just getting it out of the way for them is a priority. But I wanted you guys to know that. And I think they were happy also that we kind of had started a priorities list for them. And I think if we could present some projects that were a little bit more formalized, and saying, here's what we are interested in, that they would be happy to get that from us.
Okay.
So, not by this meeting, but I guess also we're also competing with other departments of the township. So, not that anyone takes from the other, but if speed is the essence for the board, I'm not sure how they'll deliberate on some of these things.
Okay. Well, hopefully people like their parks and they'll pay more attention to us. But, no, I get it. All right. Does anybody have further information regarding the American Rescue Plan Act?
Is there a set amount that's been, do we know the set amount that's gonna come to East Bay Township?
So from the direct funding that we're talking about, it's 1.2 million.
Okay.
And I am not entirely sure how we are anticipating splitting that up. Like, I'm not sure if, I know we're not down to the nitty-gritty details yet, but, you know, like, just rough chunks, I'm not quite sure where
Yeah,
theirs are
that's what
going.
I was gonna ask. Did the board say, okay, you know, let's do 40% this, 20% this, 20% to parks? Did they come up with any sort of formula that they are recommending?
Not at all, not at all,
Okay.
really, no. And during their discussion too, at their meeting, it wasn't just the parks that was discussed. So in Beth's notes from that meeting, she told them the Parks Commission was interested to know the board's intention. But then also, the board discussed some of the EMS needs, and they're also in the process of generating a list of emergency medical services needed. Let's see who else they talked about. Request projects and prioritization from the Parks Commission, Planning Commission, East Bay Ambulance, Wade Trim's Master Utility Plan, Department of Public Works, and, this is a nice little detail I don't fully remember, but they're hoping maybe timeline for getting projects from these groups is by June. Develop a list of categories of expenditures with underlying potential projects for parks, et cetera. So this is the board, not us. Fall of '22. Gain public input on categories by this winter. And so the board kind of coming into making a decision on how they're going to spend it about a year from now.
So I imagine by winter, when does East Bay work on their budget usually?
Before the end of the year.
I
October.
was going to say later in the year.
Well, they'll start late
So
summer.
so it sounds like they're probably trying to plan for where to place this in the budget for the following year? Is that what I'm kind of gathering? or-
Yeah. It's
Well, I
good.
think there's a timeline with this art anyway.
Yes.
That's what they're trying to do, is get it within that timeline.
Yes. And so I guess it's nice too that now it seems that we have a time, June. So at the next couple of meetings, the board would like us to present projects in our priorities.
Haven't we done that already?
Well, you would-
Hopefully, but I think maybe they want more of a detail within that.
Yeah, and I think this is because it's exceptional outside of normal operations. It's not money that really comes from the normal source of revenue and therefore can be kind of budgeted out the way that it normally is.
So I have to say, I mean, one of our items that we discussed was restrooms at Killingsworth. Well, given the price of our new estimate for that small warming hut,
Jeez.
what is gonna be, what's gonna be the estimate for
Yeah.
the restrooms? I mean,
Well, I mean, depending on, like, if you're doing like a vault, I mean, is the current one there a vault toilet?
yeah.
I mean, if they're trying to make a nicer vault toilet, I mean, I'm sure it's not gonna be,
That's not significant, yeah.
because I imagine they winterize that and all that and close it down for the winter and, yeah, and certain things like wood chips on the playground, stuff like that, you know, I'm sure, the playground's probably, you know, probably has some things that might need replacing on it, and, you know, that stuff costs a lot of money. The wheelchair swing, if we ever decide to move forward with that.
Well, we got a list right here.
Yeah, and so that's
Killingsworth Community Garden, Park and Rec Plan, Wheelchair Swing, Trail Study, Twale Acquisition, and Hammond Park Trails. Hammond Park Trails being the dog park.
Is it the
and
water tower slash
Yeah, the
water
water tower.
I will say, I did have somebody reach out to me today about the dog park, so that's still a community want for East Bay.
But like Killingsworth on that list and the community garden, we just listed it. We didn't go into detail, like with specifics or close to specifics on your list that you read for it. So maybe we should put that on next month's agenda.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. I think we should probably have this on the agenda until we submit to the board in June. And I guess that's one thing to look at too, is when the board says, develop a list of categories of expenditures. So are there items that we identified in the list we came up with? And I think there were 7 items that I think that the Parks Commission all kind of agreed on to include to discuss further. Are there any of those that we know amount that we can list an expenditure to without having to do a bunch of work or ask someone to generate it for us? I guess that's probably maybe in the plan here, but as you know, I guess apparently we can't trust.
Right.
Okay.
We went from 32,000 to 470, so no.
Did we ever get an estimate on the wheelchair swing? Was that? Okay. I wasn't sure if we had a hard estimate on what that, $2,500 or whatever it was gonna be.
Well, if we did the wheelchair swing, we would have to put a path to it. Maybe just like finishing Grace with the ADA accessibility. Because the wheelchair, you can't just plop it there.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll,
Because
Like-
finishing the trails is in the rec plan for Grace, I think. Or am I making it up as I go along?
Oh, let's take a look.
Priorities, parking lot and basketball court repaving,
That was actually done. And the pickleball
Yeah.
courts we got.
yeah.
So no, the only outstanding thing really from our plan is that warming hut building, but
But if you look at the map,
of.
there's the recommendations on the map.
Yeah.
And provide additional play equipment, provide ADA compliant walks connecting the major amenities of the park, which is greatly lacking at Grace. Which is in our,
Yeah, there's
Rec
some
plan.
of that's done, but I don't believe what's on the plan is fully built out.
this is a.
so we would be putting together more of the details of, the broad picture that's outlined in the plan, you know,
This was made in 2013.
Got anyone soon?
Graduated high school.
I only had 2 children.
I had hair. All right.
So, yeah, the wheelchair swing and the ADA paths. Because I would imagine COVID brought more people to that park that were,
I keep on thinking of the ball field there, and I know there's a soccer field. I don't know the exact sizes of it, but I mean, I wonder what
utility field.
multi-use field.
Yeah, multi-use.
So here's something else to consider, though. So, you know, one of the things the board's going to do, gain public input on categories of projects. So how they framed it is if you had $1,000 and had to divide it between these various projects, how would you allocate the funds? Potential survey or outreach. What is something that we could put forward that isn't going to that's going to generate interest, I guess? Because if we're going
Dog
to a
park.
public forum, there's going to be that factor
It's
that wasn't
dog
there
park.
before.
If we want to get check marks from the public, that's my vote, is for a dog park.
Start developing Hammond Park with like a,
Yeah, I mean, dog park is, I think a dog park's gonna be something big that our community wants.
And I guess though, then, how would we present that then? Because,
Well-
you know, it's pretty green out there. It's pretty fresh, so I don't think there's any,
there's no development,
no improvements at all yet. I guess, how do you
parking.
start with that? Or, you know, I guess how it's like, is it pitched as the beginning of opening it up as the dog park? Or would we be able to commit to establishing a full-blown dog park at that point? I don't know.
Well, how many items do we want to throw out to the board? Because community garden, I think, would generate a lot of hits. I think community garden,
Especially don't forget the pavilions part of
Yeah.
that. It's a gathering place, and of course, then the gardens is mixed in with that, so.
I think the garden and the dog parks would get a lot of hits
Mhm.
over a wheelchair swing. But I don't know, people have big, good
Well,
hearts,
I think
you know?
most of this is anyways gonna go towards the water systems in most townships. Yeah,
You mean, so like how the board's gonna spend the money?
yeah.
Yeah, I know that there's some of that that's not gonna be up for grabs, really, but it sounds like the board wants to make this, wants the community to have some input on how, where the funds that they can distribute are gonna go. So I guess, yeah, now it's, you know, something like a swing doesn't sound as fun, like it doesn't really capture the imagination this way a
It's not
dog
as-
park
as
does.
large, I guess.
Right, but
as
you might get like the feel-good vote. You know, like, oh, hey, that would be really wonderful, is to.
There's probably other funding though for stuff like ADA.
Another idea is to see how, you know, what kind of list we come up with that would complement other projects that are already in the works, you know, that might help complete it. Like, you got the safe routes to school, but maybe there's, you know, stuff that, you know, wasn't thought of that could be like a complementary project for that, but I don't know. I know we'll have to do some thinking on it.
They covered, new project, a covered facility to handle like farmers markets and that here at the township, over by the water pump station, further down, right down on the 3 Mile.
Well, you know, that's something that when I was here before, it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem, is that I'm not sure if we would have the vendors to be able to do it. I know that Bev has invested some serious research into this. And I guess I think one of the concerns I would have is if we built something like that, would we be able to get use out of it? And I know that there's interest in it, but there's actually a lot of rules around farmers markets.
A lot of
Not only
rules.
farmers markets, I mean, it could be a car show event, or, I mean, some kind of events that could happen as an area that people can gather safely on the outside,
Mhm.
yet have it covered. Like a community center. I mean, really, this is the center hub of, 3 Mile and Hammond of East Bay Township is right here, so it is a community hub. So like a community center, so to speak, outside. Have concerts.
Hmm.
Why not? Got the parking facility for it. Have, art shows, anything like that.
Yeah, well, we'll have to do some deep thinking on this.
Right.
So the deadline to have this done is the June,
And so if we worked it on April,
so we'll want to,
May,
So the board meets before us, and unless this changes, that makes our deadline May. So that gives us 2 meetings
May.
All right.
to
So-
really, but I think all we really need to do is submit a description of projects and priorities to the Board of Trustees. I think I don't know if we should submit all 7 of the items that we
I
have.
agree, we should not.
Yeah.
And maybe we could start removing some and then kind of figure out how we're going to pitch the ones that we still have on our list. Because it sounds like there's some room to offer up a few ideas, especially if it's going to become a community survey sort of deal. Maybe one of these ends up being more popular than we thought. But I guess also too, basing it in the reality of if maybe maximum we're getting 100,000, couple 100,000, how much can we actually do with that? We talked about the TART trails. They're spending, it's like $13 million on that trail. I'm looking at the trail map. It was like, what if we did a 5-mile connector? It's like, well, apparently that costs $13 million.
$100,000 goes by really fast.
But a lot can be said for covering the fees, the architectural fees,
That's also true. That's also true.
So
that,
I think we should come back with some dreams. Another dream would be, I think, on the Boardman Lake through the county, possibly. Aren't they doing like, they're calling it fitness court?
Yep,
And that's
there's
kind of-
one currently out in
and-
Blair Township.
And wouldn't it be nice if we could incorporate that covered, so in the wintertime, it could be facilitated, over maybe at, I hate to say Grace, but, because here's the deal. With Grace, you have multi-facets of things that can happen. So one family member might want to go sledding, but then the other family member might want to go do this fitness thing or walk in the woods. And that's why Grace is so nice, one size. 2 is, there's a lot of variety there. So anyways, so I thought that was kind of neat, and it's going to happen on the Boardman Lake, on that loop trail. I think it's through the county and through Priority Health.
Yep, and that particular one, if you guys want to see what something like that would look like, if you go to the Blair Township Park, they have one already set up, and you have a phone app that is compatible with the setup, and I'm not exactly sure, I didn't play around with it, but it seemed like a really cool concept. And I think there actually might be some potential additional funding. I can't remember how it was explained to me, but our HR director was kind of taking the lead with that, and I think if we hit them up, they might be able to get us a discount or something. There's some sort of incentive if there's another spot in the community. So it's worth looking into, and next time I see her, I'll ask about it. But it's not a bad gig. It's pretty cool.
Could be a possibility.
Yeah, at one point, we talked about putting that at the dog park, though, too.
Yeah. That's what
Well,
we did.
and I would say we need to think also not only of children, but of our aging community and their needs and what is, what their needs might be. especially in the exercise theory or in anything else that they would do. And yes, that's right, we did think of having that type courses throughout the dog park area.
So I guess, I hate to bring it back, but I guess maybe this is where the rec plan comes back in again. And I guess instead of looking at the community garden to build it, what if there was like something that we could then say, well, this is the community garden, but like what we're actually buying is like the architecture fees or something like that, or getting that started, or
Or the excavation, or, we talked today at the community garden meeting that after our April meeting, then we're going to start going out with thoughts and ideas of different materials to use. What is our concept of what we see out there and the landscaping, and then go out for engineering of it, So,
yeah, my thought being that we could maybe get some of the costs out of the way, and then maybe it helps us plan a little bit bigger on the spectrum of a lean community garden to a really to one that has more at the start of it. I guess
we
we could.
talked today about doing it in phases, but then again, we're going to wait on that community survey back, to see that response back. But alone, we were looking at, we're going to walk the area, the next meeting, not to say, but anyways, I think in there, we sort of guessed a 30 by 60 foot pavilion area, which is quite large, building, and just that concept of building that with the materials that we want to choose, that's going to be a lot. Same with irrigation to create for the gardens in themselves.
Yeah, and so, I guess maybe the timing actually would work out well, though, for something like a concept plan, architecture plan, because if the board is going to hear it in June, and then they're going to start winnowing in the fall, and then into the winter, that might be kind of coordinating well with your timing with the subcommittee of getting the surveys done, getting the ideas more finalized, so when we're ready to spend that money, we kind of know what we're going for.
Can these ARPA funds be used for like the warming hut potentially to help offset some of those costs?
I think so.
I mean,
There's nothing about it that would make me think no.
It's the same deal, the warming hut or the pavilions. It's the same idea.
I'm just thinking if we were to get those funds to use it towards a project that's ready to start
Yeah.
construction and help
Although,
help
I think
finish.
you were saying it's going to be finalized in 2024 with disbursements up until
26.
2026.
You have to spend it by 26.
Yeah, so that's pushing that warming hut even further out.
That's true, because the way those trust fund grants work,
Right.
this is the 22 cycle, but we might not start getting it until, when
You
did,
just said 2026.
well, when did we put in for the Arbutus? It was back in 19? 18?
I
don't know,
think
we've
it
been
wasn't
working on
that far.
Arbutus
I
for
think
two-
2020.
19?
I think 2020 we got that. And then,
I don't know, let me look.
pretty sure.
I feel like it was the end of 19.
But point is, we need.
Who was on
to-
the board then?
We need to come up with some ideas, firm ideas, make the discussion, so maybe not put a lot of things on that agenda for next month's meeting, so we can actually accomplish some
Yeah.
solid ideas.
We could also see what comes back from the, on that estimate from the engineer.
Right.
And then I guess with that estimate, we can see if it would be like a reasonable township match that we would have to put up, or if that would be better supplemented by, say, like a little ARPA funding to offset the township cost.
But that's backing that way out to 2026, another 4 years.
Right, so we have to commit it by 24, and spend it by 26. You don't have to spend it on 26, you have to spend it by 26.
Yep, so if we could find the contractors to
Right.
get to work sooner, we could spend it sooner.
Yeah, so I guess, that kind of does free us up. We don't need to, we can kind of spend it where we need to get some of these priorities done. I guess it could go towards that warming hut, which is our top priority. We're already in the midst of it. But it might be contingent on what our estimate is. I think depending on the estimate and depending on the amount of trust, I guess that also kind of makes it hard too, is the trust fund amount is variable. We don't know exactly how much the township's looking at or how much to even ask for.
And this is all a dream anyways, because might not get anything.
That's also true. I guess, maybe one thought is what if we just kind of removed some of the lower priorities from our Parks and Rec plan and just focused on some of the top ones? I know Killingsworth Garden and Grace are some of our top three in the plan itself. And if we're just going to the board and proposing projects that the community is going to have input on, I guess I could see those doing well in a public forum. I don't know how much public input went into this Park and Recs plan, but I know that there was care that went into the making of the plan.
You need to redo that.
There was a lot.
Yeah, that's
And
coming up.
actually, There was a lot.
Okay, but we
There
don't need to
was,
start.
I will say there was a lot of
working on
time
that
put
this
into
year.
that. And we're
To
due
start
for that to
preparing
come
that
up anyways.
Yeah.
2023, so we need to,
End of
and our
20.
goals
Ends
will
of
change.
23.
I mean, over
So we have to
the,
start it for 24.
Yeah, so that was something I know was mentioned at the last meeting, and I spent some time looking at that, and I did talk with Beth about that too. She thought it was a good idea. I guess it's too because of that timing aspect, because if they're going to spend it, if they're making the decision in 23, and we need to start working on this in 23, that timing does line up. I think the one part that now I'm a little concerned about, if there's public input, is that doesn't sound very exciting.
What doesn't sound exciting?
Funding the Parks and Rec plan. If you know what it is and what it can do for your
yeah,
community,
yeah,
it is. But I guess if it's like, if someone's like, if their choices in the community survey process are like this new thing or
Yeah.
a 5-year Parks and Rec plan, depending on what the disposition is, or if they're aware of what that actually means, what it means for the township, it might be hard to sell, but I don't think it's a bad idea, and I don't think that means we need to steer away from it. I just know that there's going to be challenges depending on how the board proceeds with this, and I don't know how they're going to proceed with their public input or who they're expecting to help them with that, because I know that they don't have the capacity to do that themselves. So they'll probably get a consultant to do that, to do their community input. So hopefully that means that,
well, that's gonna be after we've already come up and did our input, so that's gonna be hindsight.
correct, and
Bottom line, and although they may have public input, again, your elected officials, the township board will be the deciding factor anyways on that final. We need to, as this planning commission, I believe, come up with the ideas, start next month's meeting, everyone do their homework, and make a good foundation at the end of that meeting where we're going with it, and then from there, let it fall. So yes, we can project out what the public might want, we can project out what the township board's gonna do. We can only project what we feel as parks and see how it all falls, and then the public element of that will be after.
correct.
hindsight.
And, I guess, if we know that the board is going to be the final decision maker, we do know that early on from their discussion that they are keen on projects that would be easy to approve, low-hanging fruit. So I guess that's one thing we do know about that is, I guess they would be wary about a project that's so like early on and it's at stages, like there's so much that would need to get done to
And-
finally see
and
it through.
To be honest with everyone, you should read the community garden on that survey that went out to the educators. Read what their input was, and then we should have by April's meeting, from the community garden, what the public survey is on just that one element, community garden. But they might have some insight into maybe some other things that we right now are discussing.
You said to look at the results. Elise might have sent me a copy. Did she send everybody a copy of that?
I only got mine when I walked in the door, and it was on the table. So I'm sure there's some more packets.
Jen.
Will we
on the table.
be able to review that at the April meeting? Some of the results from the survey?
We're going to have to April 22nd, so it's not going to really be till May, but we'll have a big chunk of
Yeah.
it for the April 18th meeting, and there'll only be 18, 19, 20, 22, 4 days left of the total survey. So we can take the
Yeah.
bulk of the survey and sort of look it over.
Okay.
And yeah, Elise is planning on it for our 18th meeting, before our planning commission meeting, to, in a nutshell, what is it looking like so far? So we should have a little bit of inkling with finalization for May.
Okay, good, because if we want to have that part of our conversation for submitting this, we need to, I guess we really do need to have it done by May. I mean,
Right. We can finalize a worst-case scenario for the May meeting. Just confirm.
yeah, I guess I'm hoping then, just thinking about if we have 2 more meetings, good discussion on it. That can be really the bulk of our meeting, I guess, in April. And then May, we're moving forward and we're comfortable with it to send to the board.
But we want to keep low-hanging fruit in mind,
Easy project.
easy projects.
I agree.
But what I was understanding is projects that are already kind of in the hopper.
How about, remember when we went to all the parks and we,
Tour?
did a tour and we made a list of maintenance needs and stuff like that? I mean, do we still have a compiled list of all of that? Do you know?
You know, I
There might be some stuff
don't know
on
if
that.
I've gotten one of those. I think I've just been absent most of the times we do them. I went to them usually in the spring.
But I can
Or
look,
something.
because I don't know, I don't think, last year we did do it,
Yes.
didn't we? And we
Yeah.
all drove sort of separate cars, seems to me,
But
but,
the year before,
or the
we
year before
did
with Justin.
on your own.
So anyways, I can look and see, but that, we probably should do that, maybe we could do that in June, the parks tour.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that dealt with picnic tables, addition of picnic tables, some new trash receptacles, recycling.
Well, that's what I was thinking is, just to replace picnic tables in a pavilion,
Right.
if you got 10 tables and they're $1,000 a piece, it could add up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
Those
I
are
mean,
easy.
polishing parks is never a bad idea either.
Well, I guess
We
some.
could have a special meeting just to do the tour.
Well, tours usually are special meetings.
Yeah, it was last time.
I think,
Yeah.
then I'm thinking of before, where we'd have it before our.
Oh, ARPA special meeting? We could, it's in the budget. The treasurer approves using of funds for special meetings.
Yeah, we cancel a meeting so we can have another one.
I guess something other to keep in mind too is there's been kind of a process that we've done with this current master plan where we get some of the things out of the way and then we go for the trust fund to finish off the project. And there's a few things in here that haven't had that previous treatment, such as Killingsworth. So like the architectural design, surveying and engineering, and maybe some like the concept plans are something that usually that would happen before we go for the trust fund grant. But if we got it out of the way, I guess that would make it open to being something that could be trust fund eligible in the next few years, which is kind of how we like to do it anyways, since I know Beth doesn't like to do them back to back to back to back. So it's kind of like moving all of our parks kind of through the conveyor belt of, getting stuff done, getting the trust fund grant, and then it goes back, and then keeping them going. Just another thought as we kind of look at this, all these different things that we could do. Because it seems like, actually, I was surprised to find that in this Arbutus Lake number 5, a lot of the, there's a lot of work that was done previous to 2019, and some of the planning and concepts for the park, which I hadn't been aware of. Because I thought there was a lot of engineering that went involved, but I'm sure there
Yeah,
was
we
due to the,
Switched engineers in the middle of it all. But it looks like we applied in 2020. We talked about it for
sounds about right then.
4 years before that.
So we got it, somewhere around 2020, it's 22 now, probably.
2020 doesn't count.
That's true.
Because wasn't it due like April 1st? Maybe we,
Well,
I don't remember the
it
due
is in the
date.
spring, it is in the spring, so maybe it was delayed or something. Because,
Well, the
Maybe-
funds didn't get dispersed until last year.
well, that's what Beth was
2021.
saying.
So,
But did we apply in 19 or did we apply in 20? We might have applied in 19. I think we applied in 19.
I think we did, and then we started getting some of that confirmation back.
And
20.
then the world stopped.
Yeah. So that might have had an impact, but I guess, yeah, I mean, we're looking now at almost 3 years since we applied. And I don't know, is it maybe bidding starting this summer? Is that true?
Plan.
Construction this year?
well, we're supposed to
hasn't gone out
start
for
with
bids yet.
bidding here.
Yeah.
This spring for Arbutus. So it's probably kind of hard to get bids going too. I mean, because of everything else going on in the world.
All right, so next meeting, we're coming back with,
Bring your thinking caps, we'll make a list, and then we'll finalize the list at the May meeting? Is that what I'm
We'd
getting?
like to have something kind of firmed up in April.
Well, yeah, you have your list in April, we'll all have a pretty general idea of what we're going for, and then May, I don't know if we have to approve it or before sending it to them, or,
I think my hope would be April, we come up with our short list. May, I can come back with our proposal, how we're going to present it to the board. And then at that May meeting, we can workshop it. When I leave the meeting, get it finalized and then present it to the board for June.
because we might learn some more information on, what other departments are kind of looking at project-wise, and we might be like, oh, well, maybe we can go bigger, and throw some more projects in there or something, so.
Yeah, I think April, we should have some pretty solid ideas. So when we leave April's meeting, have solid ideas, you can come up with the final, and then we can review that final in May. So we all know at the end of May meeting exactly the changes and.
well, yeah, we have to submit it because the board's in June before us.
And then you would, after May's meeting, on May's meeting, you would finalize what we had discussed.
Yeah, and actually by the June meeting, I should be able to give a little report on what the board discussed on all the proposals they received. If they do hear it in June, I mean, they're coming up with a rough timeline in February. I'm hoping that it sticks to the schedule. It could get pushed back depending on how much business they have to do prior to this. But I know they have a timeline on this too with spending it, so I'm sure they're not going to wait too long on this. Because I'm sure it would feel foolish to just lose some of this because we didn't spend it in time. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried
All right.
about that. I think
we'll find a way to spend the money.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move forward for public comment. I know there's a lot of antsy people out there.
Oh, sorry we kept you guys so long.
I do have this before we go. Can I get Ryan and Susan to sign this, and then I'll scan this into the actual resolution that we send to Carl. I'll just copy and paste the signatures.
Sure. All right. as that's coming around.
Although you're gonna have to change that to a 1.
I will, I'll just,
Okay.
I'll just scan it out.
All right. Is, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn Monday, March 21st meeting.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Hey.
All right, meeting's adjourned.